Hey there, entrepreneur. Welcome to today's show. Man, do we have a relevant topic for you all today. I am joined by Ivan Palomino, and he is a three-time founder, and today is focused on scaling up BURNOUT, which uses brain science to enable change in organizations, which is super cool. He has extensive corporate experience in innovation and marketing. In 2018, he was diagnosed with burnout and is still struggling with his mental health, like many of us are, myself included today. And he considers purpose in his venture very important as a piece of his personal therapy. He was born in Peru, raised in Switzerland, and now lives in Dubai. So goodness gracious, you've been all over the place, Ivan. So thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you, Michelle. So just to give a little bit of background, so I grew up in Peru until the age of 15, and that's the reason why I have this Sofia Vergara type of Spanish accent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I grew up in the French-speaking side of Switzerland. What I have to highlight is, and it's something important with my story, is that I come from a social economical background that is considered poor, Peru, in the middle of nowhere. So that's something that has kind of shaped the way my relationship with money, in fact.
Sure.
And that relationship with money has a lot to do with what happens in my story. So I have studied in Switzerland. I'm an engineer, so I'm a kind of person who is always thinking about numbers, modelizing lives and all the stuff. And then I have been working in the corporate world like approximately 18 years. That's a lot, by the way.
Yeah.
And it was like kind of nice because I had the opportunity to travel around the world. In fact, I have been to more than 100 different countries.
How many languages do you speak? Do you speak lots of languages too?
I do speak English, as you have noticed.
Obviously.
English. I do speak French because I grew up in Switzerland. And then Spanish because that's my mother tongue, even though I don't practice it enough. And then I learned because of life languages that were not necessarily useful, like German, because it's mandatory in Switzerland to learn German, and then Danish, because once upon a time, Ivan fell in love with a Danish lady and he followed her up to Denmark. That's the Latino way.
Of course you did.
Yes, exactly. I was young, 19, and then I had to follow her. So
that's amazing. That's amazing.
That's part of the story.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear more of your story. But first, let's talk about the topic that we talk about here, which is adversity, my friend. So can you tell us about some sort of adversity that you have faced as an entrepreneur and the tools that you've used to kind of overcome it?
Okay, so we are jumping directly to the entrepreneur life. So first of all, nothing prepares you in the corporate world to be an entrepreneur because you need to be so agile, so quick to react to the market. And one of the things that I didn't know how to do, because the initial foundation of this company, BURNOUT, it was about doing a tech startup in education. The funny thing is that to do a tech or startup, you need to raise money. Something that I didn't know how to do it. I thought that is going to be like a little bit like the corporate presentations where you present many slides in order to tell a story, and sometimes it's going to be a big invention of yours. It wasn't that easy. In fact, this relationship in order to raise money was one of the most complicated parts of my entrepreneurial journey. And this is where I get back to something that is the initial point of discussions, my burnout. I had this burnout back in the corporate life, and that was the reason why I had to leave. And during that time as an entrepreneur, it was almost like it was coming back, this level of stress, lack of control of your life. And believe me, this raising the money, it was the trigger for, again, getting it back. It's a little bit like, I compare burnout a little bit like being an alcoholic. So you never get rid of
No, you don't. I agree.
So you always have to deal with that. So coming back to the raising the money, that was a key decision that fortunately my co-founder and I took together. Is about saying, if this is going to lead to you, Ivan, having your burnout again, and not being capable of being productive, innovative, having ideas and doing your nerd stuff, that's my role in the company, then we have to stop it.
Yeah.
So during the time of raising the money, we had already blocked 50% of our target of the money that we needed in order to continue developing our app. We decided to freeze it, to say we stop here, because the sense of not having the control of where this was going, the pressure that you have, even though it looks like funny to say, these are presentations that last approximately 15 to 20 minutes, and then you have 45 minutes of questions and all the stuff.
You get grilled. You get grilled with questions when you're asking for money. It's hard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
People believe that because you have been in the corporate life, you can really go with it, but it's not that easy, because you have to comply with so many specific requirements every time that you're presenting to a different investor. So we decided to close it. And also, it was also a good decision today, after close to 1 year after the last funding raising. So we have progressed, but in our pace. My co-founder and I, we have progressed, maybe not in the way that most of the entrepreneurs would like saying 5x, 6x every year. But we have done it in our pace, and we have fortunately a company that is progressing, but in a more human way, because it takes care of myself, takes care of how we engage other people, employees, in order to help us develop the company in a human scale.
Yeah. I mean, I think so many good points right there, Ivan. I've seen so many people go through the funding pitches, and the beating the streets, essentially, right, for the money. And I think they definitely underestimate the emotional toll, especially if you are a founder of an organization and your business almost becomes an extension of you, right? So then every pitch that you go into, it can feel like, and I've heard people say this, that it feels almost like a personal assault, right? Because they're asking questions and they're picking it apart. And if you don't have a really good, strong self-worth about you as well, you can definitely collapse under that pressure, right?
Exactly. But what we have to understand about this mental illness, which is burnout, it is not the amount of time that you devote to grow the baby. Is it not that you don't accept criticism? Criticism is good. It is the lack of control, because every time somebody is going to ask a piece of you that you are not prepared to give away. So it's almost like you don't have the control of your life. And when there is this misalignment of what you believe in, your values, of how you see progressing your company and your personal life, then this misalignment, in psychology, they call it cognitive dissonance. When you are not living the life that you want, this is where your burnout kicks in, creates unnecessary stress, and then you go back to the bad patterns, sleeping really bad, brain freeze. In fact, you are working on something and you spend hours, instead of something that usually takes you 20 minutes to do, then you are doing it for 3-4 hours. That is painful, because you don't feel that you have your life in control.
Yeah. And I think people underestimate old habits, right? Like you just said, like you slid right back to where you were, right? And I think it's a lot stronger. And I like how you kind of equated it to addiction on that level, because over here in the United States, it's definitely an addiction, right? The badge of busy, that kind of like, if you're not hustling, if you're not grinding, if you're not running your ass off, then you are not enough, right? You are not, if you're not quite exhausted and running yourself ragged, I think it's becoming less sexy than it used to be. But I think that was part of the game. And I think you and I talked about this before the episode too, about like, there's a shame that's associated with slowing down sometimes, right?
Exactly. How can you be a successful entrepreneur if you are not capable of controlling your emotions, controlling portraying this image that you are successful, making money, every day hustling? You cannot say it, and there is a shame, and it takes time. I'm based in Dubai, and from time to time I'm hanging around with people in the startup world. We have a drink together, and it's very difficult to say to someone, I'm not coping. You really need to spend a lot of time until one entrepreneur, one founder is going to tell you, really, I'm almost divorcing. Really, I don't have a life. I haven't seen my child. Many sad discussions, because it is basically a shame. You cannot talk with a venture capitalist and say, hey, by the way, I have
my life's a shit show. Yeah, I'm a mess. Is that cool? Give me money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Michelle, that's one of the reasons why I found quite important the role that your show has, is to make entrepreneurs talk about it in the most vulnerable way. Because what I'm expecting out of this discussion is that they say, hey, it happened to Ivan, this Sofia Vergara type of guy based in Dubai. It happens to me. So we have to be able to talk about it and say things as they are. And because that will make us stronger. The acknowledging that you are in a situation that is super difficult. And sometimes it's not your friend, the funny friend, that will understand it. Sometimes it's not going to be your empathetic wife who believes that you are the best guy in the world because you are inventing something, creating something. Sometimes it's just about saying it to everyone so that people start talking about it. We founders, we fail because we don't have the control of what it is in our brains. And to have the control, we have to acknowledge it and share it with others.
Yes. I mean, I think, we say a lot of the times on this show, entrepreneurship is a marathon, not a sprint. And I think you just hit the nail on the head where you said it's the mental game of entrepreneurship. I have met so many brilliant CEOs and brilliant founders. But if you, are in it 5-6 years, I think you need to be mentally prepared to run that marathon. I think, for myself personally, about a year ago, my body started shutting down and my mind started shutting down because I was like you, burnt out, done. And psychologically, my body was going into freeze every time any level of stress would hit. So my heart rate would drop. There was a point where I was taken out by ambulance in front of my 9-year-old, which is not a place anyone wants to be.
No.
But it's because, again, it wasn't necessarily, to your point, it's not that I'm working a million hours and I'm, it was that I slipped right back to where I was at corporate and I thought that I could do it. Right. And it was like, if I couldn't do it, you had to almost admit to it. But to your other point, the more you talk about it, at least this is like one of my big missions in life, it's exactly why I do this podcast, why I do a lot of things, is the more we talk about it, the more we give permission to other people to talk about it. Because right now they're all feeling alone. Like I imagine in your shoes, when you were in that, you're like, oh, am I the only one doing this? Like, then there's something, it becomes is there something wrong with me conversation, right? Versus no, everyone's like this. Just some people are better at hiding it.
Yeah. I mean, back in the days when I was younger, I think that I was able to hide a little bit better. Sometimes this lack of confidence, I was able to hide it because I don't know, it's almost like you are in the flow of progression, and there is a lot of, I don't know, like push in your brain saying it's like adrenaline, and you can handle it better. When you reach the 40s, I would say that your values are kicking in, and there is something that changes where you see reality, you get this lucidity, and then you cannot just push yourself without believing. And that, Michelle, it goes into something that you are going to find a little bit contradictory. When what you do as an entrepreneur has purpose, it's almost like it helps you continue and heal out of your problem. It's like, I don't know, back in the days, I remember that people who were having psychological problems, were telling me that the best way to get out of a problem is to help others. And I know a lot of life coaches, by the way, who, because of their personal stories, they got the purpose in what they do. And it is true. When you see results and you think, I'm doing it not for the money. And we will get back to my relationship with money, by the way. But I'm doing it because I like to see impact on what I do. People dealing better with performance at work, but in a human way, because I have got these mental processes that will help me, that it can be useful at work, but also in my personal life to deal with priorities, to find yourself, to understand yourself a little bit better. Principles that are difficult to sell to a company. By the way, when we started working with Besen, our focus was in mental well-being, and that was pre-COVID. And believe me, nobody was listening to us.
No, they didn't want to talk about it then. No, I agree, because I was doing similar stuff and nobody wanted to talk about it until it hit their bottom line and the people were breaking down. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. So that's a little bit part of the story, Michelle.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I think it's wonderful to hear you speak it out loud. And I think the figuring out your own values, figuring out your own purpose. And I think it's sometimes couched in the, like, what's your why? Right. And I understand that, but it's also a matter of, like, what values do you want to live into as a human being on this planet? Right. Like, I know, like, I've done a million different values exercises and I do them with my clients all the time, but I don't think that, unless you have a coach in front of you, unless you've gone through something like maybe you've gone through, I don't know that you sit down and say, I wonder what my values are right now. But I think you should, right? Like, that should be a thing everybody does.
We all should, but as you mentioned it, if we don't have somebody to bounce ideas, we are going to start believing that the influence from the outside, whatever is, like, let's say that I'm living in Dubai, and you have heard that the lifestyle in Dubai is about status, is about showing that we are successful, because everybody comes here to earn big bucks.
Right.
But if you don't have someone to make the process, we misunderstand that what the society is dictating, is it my values? Is it the pre-programming that we have in our brain? Like, whatever our parents have told us, you are not good in math, you are a woman, you should be doing that, or husband or partners, or whoever has been telling us a lot of things, has been written, hard-coded in our brain. And in order to understand our values, we need to remove what has been hard dictated by others to understand what makes us joyful, live a life that is fulfilling, because the understanding of fulfillment, believe me, is something that is so hard. And I go back to my personal story with money. I thought that I had to stay in my corporate work because I needed that money for me, because I came from a poor background and I don't want to get back anymore. Right. And I was justifying, my family needs that money. And I can tell you, it was bullcrap. It was really bullcrap. My life as an entrepreneur has reduced the amount of available income drastically, because when you have a startup, you are reinvesting almost everything.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. But I bet you it brought you back. I think that's the difference, right?
It brought my brain back. It brought my family together. I was fortunate that I have a partner, my wife, who is somebody who don't think in the same way as me. So she's a bit more of a judging, empathic, let's say, bounce board to discuss ideas. And she understood what I was going through. She didn't push me to things that I didn't want to do. My daughters are people who recognize, saying, okay, maybe we don't have the money to have the 2 times per year nice holidays in a fancy location, but I have my father present. And when they say present, I understand the word, because when I was present and under burnout, I can tell you I was either like a zombie or I was in a bad mood, not receptive to whatever they were saying.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think people underestimate, and they don't see that, or they normalize it, right? As like, this is just how it's supposed to be. And they forget that if that is how it is, like, you have a choice. Like, you actually can make it. It may make you uncomfortable, because I did something similar to you, where I cut our income in half over here, where my husband and I are both working like 6-figure jobs. And then all of a sudden I was like, nope, I'm out, and that does definitely impact your lifestyle in a major way, but you regain yourself. And again, I'm not anti-money. I want to make that clear too. And I don't think you are either. Like, we're not anti-money, but we are probably pro having your values in place, having your purpose being the driver, and understanding what you want, right? Like what you actually want your life to look like and how you want to show up in this world. And then the money kind of comes, right? Like that's how I look at it.
It is. What is funny is that is a natural process because you are so focused on having the impact that good results come. Customers come because they see that what you are doing is with passion, with caring, that you are impacting the life of employees in our case, and customers come naturally. But if your KPI for success is revenue, then you're screwed. Definitely, you are not going into the right direction, and that breaks a person. That makes you drop the ball, and that mentally doesn't align. And then every hour that you will spend working on your venture, it will be like going to work. And the main idea is that not to be at work, is to enjoy what we are doing, these interactions.
Yeah. I mean, if you hate what you're doing and you're an entrepreneur, I don't understand. Like, I never understand that. Right. Because I've seen some and I'm like, but entrepreneur, I understand it. Again, life contracts, you have to pay the mortgage, you have to do fine. Sure. I get that. But at the same time, you know, if you are an entrepreneur right now, listening to this and you are miserable in what you're doing, you need to have a really good conversation with yourself and those around you to say like, okay, like I have just recreated. For me, I was always very dedicated to not recreating my corporate version, to your point earlier, right? Not recreating who I was in corporate, just an entrepreneur with an entrepreneur label, right? So you need to be very careful and be constantly rechecking in with yourself and reassessing the situation to make sure that you are still in alignment, because it's very easy to slip out as well, like we've talked about.
That's exactly an extremely good point that you have put. So, and that drives us to, as an entrepreneur, how can I avoid going into the direction of burnout? How can I rewrite a little bit the code of how we live? So I think that is quite important to do these constant check-ins as an entrepreneur, to get the time to disconnect of reading the emails and have a time with yourself, because you need to check continuously that what you are doing is in line with what you imagined, these values, or I don't even like the word values, but because
I go back and forth on it too.
Difficult in your brain, but these behaviors that you want to have every single day, like, do I want to be the type of person, entrepreneur, who can still interact with my daughters if they have a question about homework? Do I want to have a time with specifically with my wife, so that I can maintain my relationship and have her support back? In fact, that's a price to pay. So we need to create these micro moments where we are constantly in check-in. As an entrepreneur, you cannot just work 18 hours without these micro breaks. And by the way, this is what allows me to be in control still of my life, is that to have certain number of routines. Some of them that I do just before opening the laptop in the morning. I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I don't open the laptop until 7. So in between, I need to do a couple of check-ins, and that allows me to have the sense of control. What do I want to achieve today? Am I doing still something that I enjoy? Did I have the impact that I wanted? What would look an amazing, good day today? And that's the type of things that it looks stupid, right? Because in my brain of engineer, you think, how can the brains be so moronic? But in reality, it is not. There is a psychology, and advancements in terms of how the brain processes joy, happiness, fulfillment, sadness, emotions, that has been growing constantly during the last years. The rise of neuroscience has made it that now we can do a correlation that is more scientific than in the past with just psychology, because it looked like psychology was more observation. But today we can see this observation in our brain. How molecules react to the actions that we have, why there is so much friction to be motivated in what we do.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm looking forward to the next like 10 years and seeing also the generations behind us coming up. And because their approach to work is a lot different than maybe we were taught, and they need the motivating. They want their lifestyle to look a certain way and to feel a certain way. They want to be motivated by purpose, things like that. So I mean, I always wonder, like I'm always looking at everything as one big kind of study anyway. When I always look at the data of everything. But I'm going to be curious to see in the next 10 years how the workplace evolves to accommodate exactly the things that you're saying, that more and more people are saying we want, and it's a non-negotiable for us, right?
I think it is going to be painful for corporations. Believe me. So there is already studies that were done during the COVID times to see what are the minorities that are most affected at work. Generation Z they are capable of burning out after 3 to 6 months of coming to the workplace, especially because they had to work remotely.
Yeah.
The second group is women who have, as we know, more accountability and responsibilities in our society. The ones dealing with home and dealing with work at the same time, that breaks a person. Yeah. So, and corporations haven't done enough today in order to accommodate that, because they are breaking in an easier way. While my generation, I'm Generation X, I'm not even a millennial anymore. I'm a Generation X. We were programmed to say success is earning money in a good company. For this Gen Z, success is doing something that is for the good of our society, that is meaningful, where I have the opportunity to learn continuously. I don't think that we are accommodating this generation, and they are brilliant. They know about digital. They learn in an easier way, like in 6 minutes, they go in YouTube, they learn a new skill. They are not like us wanting to do an online course of 6 hours or reading a book in order to
no, they're 15 steps ahead of all of us. And I think, I look at these companies and I'm like, you guys, it's like turning the Titanic. It's like a massive thing to get them to change, but it's almost like an evolve or die situation coming soon. And I think some of these like enterprise level companies and these massive companies, some of them are waking up to it, but some of them are going to lose, a large part of their workforce if they don't.
They are losing it. As you know, there is this big movement of leaving works because lack of purpose, they don't feel valued and so on. But the younger generation, in my opinion, will go into jobs where they have their own decisions. So they will prefer to work for maybe 10% of a good salary, but doing something with purpose. And the worst is going to be that companies will have to pay them as an outsourced service. And that is going to cost even more for corporations, because these guys are going to be sitting in an island, sitting in a cheap location, working remotely, dictating their own lines of work. And it's going to be tough for companies to get them back.
Yeah. And I think you and I should maintain taking a page out of that book, right? That like purpose-driven, keeping that at the front of our forethought, not reverting back into old patterns, like, all of that, kind of keeping that fresh, and then, leading the charge like you are with your company as well, like leading the charge into conversations like that. So can you tell people exactly kind of what your company is doing? Because I know you guys do some really amazing work.
Listen, so I mentioned to you earlier that when we started, we wanted to be full well-being. And the reason was because if you are not good with yourself, you cannot be productive. You cannot be innovative. Stress is something that in your brain produces that you are blocked to be productive. I mean, I don't know how many times I have been part of brainstorming sessions lasting 8 hours. So they want you to be innovative in sessions where there is high level of pressure. That contradicts how our brain processes innovation.
Yeah.
It cannot be working. So we went into the area of well-being. Unfortunately, corporations were not ready at that moment. So we pivoted our services in order to say, how can we create that people, instead of just acquiring knowledge about a skill that you need to acquire. Let's say communication skills, or let's say better empathy, or being a leader who is capable of igniting the fire in the teams, making them, creating a movement. So, and these are things that we went into research, into understanding through behavioral change, what is exactly the things that makes the movement that from I know to I want to do it to I really do it. Yeah. So we have applied it's not created, because that methodology, it makes at least 12 to 15 years that is already existing. But how can we create a journey where a mental process where people can go into practicing new skills in a way that is brain friendly? Right. And that's when we started proposing productivity, how can I call it, trainings, in the way that people can have results, real actions that are measurable, instead of having just satisfaction surveys. Hey, he was funny, this Spanish looking guy. That it was more about real tangible results. So we invested on creating the tools, digital tools, to track that there is progress, that people, to make it easy for people to have access to facilitators at any time, because we have questions all the time. Yeah. Secondly, that when you teach someone, you are not learning for 2-3 hours, but you are learning in bits of pieces with a real person, so that you have the time to digest and one part of the knowledge and put it in practice right away. Mm-hmm. And so that people feel a little bit that is more personalized, because the challenges that people have in order to be more empathic are different from person to person. I'm giving the example about empathy. So it needs to be kind of individualized. So we have created a combination of live sessions together with digital access to track performance improvement on people and give more accessibility to facilitators. So it's almost like taking example from the coaching perspective, but in our case, we wanted to make it like a real process that is scalable in large organizations.
Yeah. And I like the fact that you're giving kind of bite-sized chunks, right? Because that's the thing in coaching is people always, they come in and they want it yesterday. I have that conversation with people all the time where they come in and they want transformation from me in 1 hour. And I was like, you've tuned me out after the first 15 minutes. Like I can't, it takes a long time to kind of undo the stuff and have it land in the right way that actually transforms people's way of being, to your point. Not just like, oh, I heard this cool thing. Like, no, we're talking about like their actual behaviors. Like that takes a lot longer and a lot more comprehensive time, I would think, right?
Exactly, Michelle. So, and the clear example is like, at the end of the year, many of us, we want to have, I don't know, a healthier lifestyle to say, let's say, eat less chocolate or go to the gym. And already that simple thing, we cannot just do it from one day to the other. We start the gym and our motivation goes to health because there is too much effort to be done.
You need a micro step, like you said. Like
a micro exactly.
Step. Yep.
And that's something that usually I use in the conversations with human resources people. If that happens to you, imagine change in a big organization. Just knowing the benefits of changing will not help. Just knowing the benefits of having a healthier lifestyle doesn't help people to really do it, right?
Right.
And
yeah. I mean, and that in compounding with like, so when I was in corporate, we were bought and sold like multiple times. So multiple layoffs, and I was in operations. So we were changing like every 5 seconds. And I remember having conversations with leaders about stuff like, no, there's different profiles around change management. You can't just be like, hey, change and have everybody do it. Like everybody, to your point, it's personalized. You know, they come to the table with their own stuff, right? So if you're not handing it to them in micro doses, it's not going to last. They may change to appease you or to keep their jobs or to whatever that instant kind of gratification is thing, but it's not going to last, right?
Exactly. And most of these change management processes that are applied in corporations, they come from the 70s. So what does it mean is that, one, we have change. We cannot use, I don't know, the ADKAR model or, I don't know, the McKinsey one of the reasons, once I think it's called the 7S of McKinsey, because it's almost like believing that advertising is going to make people change. But human beings have become a little bit more lucid and understand that I'm being manipulated to do something that I still don't believe in.
Right.
It's almost like purchasing something that you don't really need. Yeah. So, and that's where the individualized approach helps. And it doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be like, I need 1,000 coaches to change my 60,000 employees company. Mm.
No, it doesn't. I mean, I think also we need to not overcomplicate it. Like you were saying, like, don't try to make it one big old PR campaign of why everybody should change, really get to the center of like, what's in it for them? What's in it for them to make them want to change, right? Like, that's the question I tell clients all the time of like, when they're trying to convert or trying to sell or trying whatever, like, well, what's in it for the other person? Like, if you can understand that and you can understand what motivates that person, then you move them to change. But if you just are going to try to make it look as sexy as possible, and they're going to see right through that crap, they're going to say, no, you're doing this because it's in your best interest. It's not necessarily in mine, right? As the company.
Exactly. And we understand it. We are not that dumb as employees don't understand that.
Yeah. I mean, I think just don't underestimate your people, folks, especially like we live in the Facebook age where we're getting served ads every fucking 5 seconds, pardon my French, but like, we know better. We know, or some don't, I don't know, but hopefully the majority of us do. Well, we could talk about this for like another 12 hours, I feel like, because I think I am very much in alignment with a lot of the things you are saying, friend, but we can't, because it's a podcast and people will eventually sign off from us. But
that's right.
Can you please tell folks where they can learn more about you and dive into more of your content, please?
So one of the things that I would recommend is we are doing 2 things that are quite important. So I don't want to preach about my company, but if you want to know about my company, is bessern.co, BESSERN.co. But what I want you to do is that if you just want to learn new things, you have the possibility to understand from the brain science point of view, how do you learn new things? We have a podcast that is called Learn with Besson, simple, that you can see either in our YouTube channel or in any of the podcast directories. And the other thing is that every 6 months, we are doing an event that is more about understanding well-being in a different manner. And that, Michelle, I have to thank you because you were part of the last wave where the idea is to say, there is a lot of talks about well-being, but how can we understand it from a visual way in short slides? Just is about a visual immersive experience where people are sharing their own personal stories. By the way, your story about your journey of resilience was quite impressive, quite touching, and I really loved it. And Michelle, thank you very much for that. So if you want to know about more reimagined well-being, we have tons of content in our YouTube channel. The next one is going to be around February next year. We try to do it every 6 months. This is our way of contributing to our community. And I think we never have enough of learning about ourselves, of having impressive, inspiring ideas.
Yeah. No, I loved the concept that you had, because reimagining well-being, right? Because we all need to do that. Even if you think you've got it, there's always room to reimagine it. That's kind of where I think with that. Exactly. Well, Ivan, thank you so much for being here with me today. This has been wonderful.
Thank you, Michelle. It was really nice to spend time with you.